When the human janitor fixed the broken toy, every royal child started calling him Papa. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The grand halls of the Galactic diplomatic station Alteris gleamed under the artificial light, its pristine corridors bustling with representatives from 200 different species. Among them moved a solitary human figure, dressed in the plain gray uniform of the maintenance staff, pushing a cleaning cart with methodical precision. Tyler Grant had been the maintenance supervisor on diplomatic station Alteris for 3 standard years. At 42, with salt and pepper hair cropped close to his skull and calloused hands that spoke of decades of manual labor, he was neither remarkable nor forgettable. The perfect qualities for someone whose job was to remain invisible while keeping the massive station functioning seamlessly during the most significant diplomatic event in the galaxy. The annual Galactic Congress was in full swing, with representatives from every major spacefaring civilization gathered to discuss trade agreements, territorial disputes, and scientific collaborations. This year was particularly significant as it marked the first time the notoriously reclusive Xenorians had sent their royal family to attend. Tyler wiped sweat from his brow as he finished repairing a malfunctioning air recycler in Corridor 17. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 60 years ago. Their inclusion in the Galactic Confederation had been reluctant at best, with many established species viewing them as primitive, volatile, and dangerously unpredictable. Most humans in interstellar space found themselves relegated to manual labor or technical roles that other species considered beneath them. Maintenance Supervisor Grant, the station's AI announced through his earpiece. Your presence is requested in the Xenorian Royal Suite immediately. Tyler frowned. The Xenorians were notoriously private and typically refused to interact with what they considered lesser beings, a category that definitely included human maintenance workers. "What's the issue?" he asked, packing up his tools. "Unspecified," the AI replied. "Priority level, urgent." With a sigh, Tyler grabbed his toolkit and headed toward the diplomatic wing. He'd learned to expect the unexpected on Alteris, where the collision of different biologies, technologies, and cultures created problems no engineering manual had ever addressed. It was one of the reasons humans, despite their primitive status, were valued in maintenance roles. Their adaptability and creative problem-solving were reluctantly acknowledged as useful traits. The Xenorian suite was guarded by 2 towering security officers, their iridescent scales shifting from emerald to sapphire as they moved. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and facial features that reminded Tyler of Earth's extinct deep-sea anglerfish, they were an imposing sight. "I'm here about an urgent maintenance request," Tyler said, keeping his voice professional and his eyes appropriately lowered as protocol demanded when addressing the guards of royal delegates. The guards exchanged looks, their gill-like respiratory flaps pulsing with apparent displeasure. After a moment of silent communication, they moved aside, allowing Tyler entry. The royal suite was a marvel of engineering and aesthetics, temporarily redesigned to mimic the methane-rich, high-pressure environment of Xenoria Prime. Tyler felt the environmental shift as he stepped through the specialized barrier field that kept the Xenorian atmosphere contained without walls. His specialized maintenance uniform automatically adjusted, providing him with breathable air while protecting his skin from the caustic elements in the Xenorian atmosphere. Inside, Tyler found himself in a space that resembled an underwater palace, with furnishings that seemed to be carved from luminescent coral and living biotech interfaces pulsing along the walls. At the center stood Ambassador Krez, the Xenorian diplomatic chief, his 4 arms crossed in what Tyler recognized as a posture of extreme agitation. "Human," Krez acknowledged without warmth, his voice translator rendering his subsonic vocalizations into standard galactic. "A crisis has emerged that your superiors claim you might address." Tyler kept his expression neutral. "I'll certainly try, Ambassador. What seems to be the problem?" Instead of answering, Krez gestured with one of his lower arms toward an adjoining chamber. "The royal offspring are distressed. Their comfort device has ceased functioning. Attempts to replace it have proven unsuccessful." Tyler followed the ambassador into what appeared to be a nursery. 6 small Xenorians huddled together in a large basin filled with a gelatinous substance that Tyler knew served as both play area and resting medium for Xenorian young. Unlike the adults, the children had not yet developed the intimidating features of maturity. Their scales were soft and pale, their large eyes curious rather than cold. They all appeared to be crying, making high-pitched keening sounds that sent shivers down Tyler's spine. At the center of their huddle was what looked like a damaged toy, a complex mechanism about the size of a beach ball, with multiple appendages and softly glowing sections. This is a memory sphere, Krez explained with obvious reluctance. It is significant to the royal offspring. It contains recorded sensory impressions of their home world, their progenitors, and their early development stages. It provides comfort in unfamiliar environments. Tyler approached carefully, aware that he was being permitted an unprecedented level of access to Xenorian royalty. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the device. After receiving a curt nod from Krez, Tyler knelt beside the basin. The royal children shrank back, their gill flaps fluttering in what he recognized as a sign of distress. "Hello there," Tyler said softly, using the gentle tone he'd once used with his own daughter back on Earth. "I'm here to help. Can I take a look at your friend?" One of the larger children, showing remarkable courage, pushed the damaged memory sphere toward Tyler. As it rolled closer, Tyler could see the problem immediately. The device had been dropped or impacted, cracking its crystalline power core and dislocating several of its sensory appendages. "The sphere is irreplaceable," Krez stated flatly. "It contains memories that cannot be duplicated. Our technicians have attempted repairs, but lack the necessary components on this station. The children have refused all substitute comfort devices." Tyler examined the sphere carefully, turning it over in his hands. The technology was sophisticated but not incomprehensible. After years of maintaining a space station filled with technologies from across the galaxy, he developed a knack for understanding how things worked. "I think I can fix this," he said finally. "But I'll need to take it to my workshop. Some of the components will need fabrication." Krez's facial appendages twitched in what Tyler recognized as surprise. "The sphere cannot leave the royal chambers, and it must be repaired before the royal offspring's rest cycle, which begins in 3 of your Earth hours." Tyler considered the parameters of the problem. "Then I'll need my tools brought here, and access to the station's fabrication network." For the next 2.5 hours, Tyler worked steadily in the corner of the royal nursery, occasionally glancing up to find the Xenorian children watching him with undisguised curiosity. He'd requested and received permission to play soft earth music as he worked, an old habit that helped him focus, and noticed that the children seemed soothed by the unfamiliar melodies of classical piano. The memory sphere was a marvel of engineering. As he carefully disassembled it, Tyler discovered that it functioned as both a holographic projector and a sensory stimulator, capable of recreating not just images and sounds but also scents, tactile sensations, and even emotional impressions. The damaged crystal at its core was similar to quantum storage devices used in high-end human tech, but far more sophisticated. Unable to replace the crystal entirely, Tyler improvised, carefully sealing the cracks with a specialized nanopolymer and reconfiguring the power distribution system to work around the damaged sections. He fabricated replacement parts for the broken appendages using materials from his own toolkit, modifying them to match the original specifications as closely as possible. Throughout the process, the smallest of the royal children had gradually moved closer to him, seemingly fascinated by his work. Unlike its siblings, who maintained a cautious distance, this child, with scales that shifted between pale lavender and soft pink, eventually settled just a few feet away from Tyler, watching his every move with enormous, luminous eyes. "You're curious, aren't you?" Tyler murmured, smiling as he carefully realigned a delicate sensor array. "My daughter was just like you at your age. Always wanted to see how everything worked." The child tilted its head, obviously not understanding his words, but seemingly comforted by his gentle tone. As Tyler worked on the final connections, he found himself telling the child about his daughter, Emma, who was now studying xenobiology at the Mars Colony University. He spoke of Earth and human customs, of the joy of repairing broken things and the satisfaction of solving complex problems. He wasn't sure why he was sharing these things with a child who couldn't understand him, but there was something therapeutic about it. Almost done, Tyler announced, connecting the last component and carefully sealing the sphere's outer shell. Let's see if this works now. He activated the device, holding his breath as the memory sphere hummed to life. For a moment, nothing happened, and Tyler's heart sank. Then, slowly, the sphere began to glow, its appendages extending gracefully. A soft melody filled the air, nothing like Earth music, but hauntingly beautiful nonetheless. The sphere rose from Tyler's hands, hovering in the center of the nursery. Suddenly, the room was transformed. Holographic projections created the illusion of an alien seascape, not water as Tyler knew it, but a shimmering, viscous medium that must represent the oceans of Zenoria Prime. Strange, bioluminescent creatures drifted through the illusory currents, and formations like living coral pulsed with gentle light. The royal children immediately responded, chirping with obvious delight. They gathered beneath the floating sphere, their scales shifting to match the colors in the projection. The smallest child, who had watched Tyler so intently, turned to him with what he could only interpret as a smile, its facial features rearranging in a way that somehow conveyed pure joy. Ambassador Krez, who had been monitoring Tyler's work from a distance, approached slowly. "You have succeeded," he stated, his voice translator unable to completely mask the surprise in his subsonic tones. Tyler shrugged modestly. "It's not a perfect repair. The memory crystal has some damage I couldn't completely fix, but I've isolated those sections. About 90% of the stored memories should be accessible, and the sensory projections are working at near-optimal levels." As he spoke, the smallest Zenorian child did something unexpected. It approached Tyler and extended a small, webbed hand toward him. Acting on instinct rather than protocol, Tyler gently offered his own hand. The child placed something in his palm, a small object that resembled a polished stone but glowed with an internal light. "The child has given you a memory token," Krez said, his voice betraying shock. "This is unprecedented." Before Tyler could respond, the small Zenorian child spoke, its translator rendering a single word in standard Galactic, "Papa." The room fell silent except for the soft sounds of the memory sphere's oceanic simulation. Ambassador Krez's gill flaps fluttered rapidly in what Tyler recognized as extreme agitation. "I apologize," Tyler said quickly, realizing he might have inadvertently caused a diplomatic incident. "I don't understand." "The royal offspring has designated you as a parental figure," Krez interrupted, his multiple arms moving in complex patterns that Tyler couldn't interpret. "This is highly irregular." Before Tyler could respond, another of the royal children approached, placed a similar glowing token in his hand, and also designated him Papa. Within moments, all 6 royal Zenorian children had gathered around Tyler, each presenting him with a memory token and using the same parental designation. Ambassador Krez's scales had shifted to a deep purple, which Tyler knew indicated extreme emotional distress in Zenorians. "This is without precedent," he stated flatly. "I must consult with the royal progenitors immediately." As Krez retreated to an adjoining chamber, Tyler found himself surrounded by the royal children, who seemed entirely comfortable in his presence now. The smallest one had actually climbed onto his lap, another shocking breach of protocol, and was examining his toolkit with obvious fascination. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Tyler said gently, though he knew the children likely didn't comprehend his words. "I'm just a maintenance worker who fixed your toy. I'm not anyone special." The door to the nursery slid open, and Tyler looked up to see not just Ambassador Krez returning, but also 2 tall, regal Zenorians whose elaborate scale patterns and ornate respiratory apparatus marked them as royalty. Tyler recognized them immediately as the royal progenitors, equivalent to king and queen in human terms, whom he had glimpsed only from a distance during the opening ceremonies of the Galactic Congress. Tyler tried to stand at attention, but the small Zenorian in his lap refused to move, and he was reluctant to disturb the child. Instead, he inclined his head respectfully, hoping it would suffice. To his surprise, the royal progenitors approached without the usual entourage of guards and advisors. They studied Tyler and their offspring with unreadable expressions, communicating with each other in subsonic frequencies that Tyler's translator couldn't detect. Finally, the larger of the two, whom Tyler identified as royal progenitor Zrel, addressed him directly. Human Maintenance Supervisor Tyler Grant, Zrel said, using Tyler's full name and title. Our offspring have collectively designated you as a parental figure. Explain. Tyler swallowed nervously. Your Majesties, I simply repaired their memory sphere. I believe there's been a cultural misunderstanding. I meant no disrespect. The second royal progenitor, Trell, moved closer, studying Tyler with multifaceted eyes. The parental designation is not given lightly by Xenorian offspring, Trell explained, her voice softer than her mates. It is reserved for those who provide essential care, protection, and emotional sustenance. But I only fixed a toy, Tyler protested weakly, even as the small Xenorian on his lap contentedly began sorting his repair tools by size and color. You restored their connection to home, to memory, to identity, Zrel corrected. And you did so with gentle words and music that soothed their distress. Our offspring are exceptionally sensitive to emotional states. They have detected something in you that resonates with the Xenorian concept of parental care. Ambassador Krez, who had been standing rigidly nearby, interjected, This situation is without precedent. A non-Xenorian, and a human no less, receiving the parental designation from royal offspring. Tyler felt a knot forming in his stomach. He had no idea of the political or cultural implications of what had happened, but he suspected they were significant. I apologize if I've caused complications, he said sincerely. Perhaps if I leave now, the children will forget about me. The smallest royal child, still contentedly organizing Tyler's tools, looked up at this and made a high-pitched sound of distress. The other children immediately echoed it, creating a chorus of unhappiness that made Tyler's heart ache. That would not be advisable, Trell said, her scales shifting to a soothing blue-green. The parental bond has already begun to form. Severing it abruptly would cause our offspring significant emotional distress. Tyler looked around helplessly. What does this mean exactly? What am I supposed to do? The royal progenitors exchanged another subsonic communication before Zrel spoke again. For now, you will continue your duties on this station, but you will also spend time with our offspring each day during your non-working hours. They have chosen you, and Xenorian tradition demands we respect their choice. But I'm just a maintenance supervisor, Tyler said, bewildered by the turn of events. I'm not qualified to. You have demonstrated the essential qualities our offspring require. Trell interrupted gently. Patience, creativity, gentleness, the ability to repair what is broken and restore what was lost. These are valued traits among Xenorians, traits that define what you would call parenthood. As if to emphasize this point, the small Xenorian child in Tyler's lap had completed organizing his tools and was now offering him back his calibration device with a chirp that somehow managed to convey pride in a job well done. Thank you, Tyler said automatically, accepting the tool and smiling at the child. That's very helpful. The child's scales rippled with pleasure, shifting to a warm golden hue that Tyler hadn't seen before. You see, Trell said, gesturing to the interaction. You respond appropriately without instruction. Perhaps there are aspects of parental behavior that transcend species boundaries. Ambassador Krez cleared his throat, the sound translated as a short burst of static. There are diplomatic and security considerations. A human with access to the royal offspring is unprecedented, as are many things that occurred during Galactic Congress, Zrel replied dismissively. Adaptation is necessary for diplomatic success. The human will be granted appropriate clearance and cultural instruction. Tyler's mind was reeling. In the space of a few hours, he'd gone from anonymous maintenance worker to some kind of adopted parent to Xenorian royalty. It was absurd, impossible, and yet as he looked at the small child happily nestled in his lap, he couldn't bring himself to object further. I'll do my best, he said finally, though I'm sure there's a lot about Xenorian children I don't understand. That is true, Trell acknowledged. But understanding can be acquired. Genuine care is rarer and cannot be taught. Our offspring have detected this quality in you. Tyler thought about his own daughter, Emma, now grown and pursuing her own path among the stars. He'd raised her alone after her mother died, balancing the demands of parenthood with the necessity of earning a living. Perhaps those years had left some indelible mark on him that the empathically sensitive Xenorian children could detect. The children will instruct you in their needs, Zrel continued pragmatically. They are quite capable of communication despite the language barrier. As if to demonstrate this, the smallest child, whom Tyler was already thinking of as the curious one, picked up 2 different tools from his kit and held them up questioningly. Without thinking, Tyler pointed to the first tool. That's a quantum harmonic calibrator. It's for fine-tuning energy fields. Then he pointed to the second, and that's a molecular bonding tool. It helps connect things that normally wouldn't stick together. The child chirped happily and placed both tools back exactly where they belonged in the kit. You see, Trell said, her scales shifting to a pleased violet hue. Communication transcends conventional language. Over the following days, Tyler's life transformed in ways he could never have imagined. His duties as maintenance supervisor continued, but they were now interspersed with regular visits to the royal nursery. He was given a special access card that caused station security to regard him with a mixture of confusion and reluctant respect. The Xenorian royal children, whom he gradually learned to call by their names, Klez, Vren, Drix, Azra, Seth, and Lumi, the smallest and most curious one, eagerly awaited his visits. Each time he entered the nursery, they would greet him with excited chirps and compete for his attention. At first, Tyler felt awkward and unsure of his role. What exactly did one do with alien royal children? But he soon discovered that despite the vast biological and cultural differences, children were still children. They wanted to play, to learn, to be comforted when upset, and to share their discoveries with someone who would appreciate them. He began bringing small human toys and tools to show them. Nothing valuable or sophisticated, just simple things that demonstrated human ingenuity. A kaleidoscope that delighted them with its changing patterns, a small wind-up music box that they found endlessly fascinating, a set of magnetic building blocks that they quickly learned to assemble into complex structures. In return, they taught him about Xenorian culture, not through formal lessons, but through play and daily interactions. They showed him how to move in the gelatinous medium of their play basin without disturbing its delicate ecosystem. They demonstrated their natural bioluminescence, creating patterns of light with their scales that Tyler gradually recognized as a form of emotional expression. Most significantly, they continued to call him Papa, a designation that initially embarrassed Tyler, but which he gradually came to accept with a mixture of pride and humility. The diplomatic community on Alteris reacted to this unprecedented situation with varying degrees of shock, curiosity, and in some cases, outrage. The more conservative species viewed the royal progenitor's acceptance of a human parental figure as scandalous. Others were merely puzzled by what they perceived as an inexplicable Xenorian eccentricity. Humans on the station reacted with surprise and, in many cases, a new respect for Tyler. Some even suggested that his unexpected connection with the Xenorian royalty might help elevate the status of humans in the galactic community. 2 weeks into this strange new arrangement, Tyler was summoned to a formal meeting with the station's diplomatic corps. He arrived wearing his maintenance uniform, freshly cleaned but still bearing the insignia of his department rather than any diplomatic rank. The meeting chamber was filled with representatives from 20 major species, arranged in a semicircle facing Tyler. At the center sat the royal progenitors, their scales gleaming in formal patterns that signified important state business. Station Director Corellian, a tall, avian being with metallic feathers and a perpetually stern expression, called the meeting to order. This gathering has been requested by the Xenorian royal progenitors to address the unusual situation involving human maintenance supervisor Tyler Grant and the royal offspring, Corellian announced, clearly choosing his words carefully. As this arrangement has now become a matter of significant diplomatic interest, clarification is required. Royal progenitor Zrel rose, towering over the assembled diplomats. Our offspring have chosen human Grant as a secondary parental figure. This is their right by Xenorian tradition and law. We have accepted their choice. A murmur ran through the assembly. A representative from the Voxian Federation, a species known for their rigid social hierarchies, spoke up. With all respect, royal progenitor, this sets a concerning precedent. Humans are barely established in the galactic community. They lack the historical and cultural credentials for such a significant connection to one of our oldest royal lineages. Tyler felt his face flush with embarrassment and a touch of anger, but he kept his expression neutral as protocol demanded. Zrell's scales darkened slightly, a subtle sign of displeasure. The Xenorian monarchy has existed for 50,000 of your Earth years, Ambassador Vox. Throughout that time, we have maintained one unbroken tradition. Royal offspring choose their secondary caregivers through empathic recognition of compatible nurturing qualities. We do not override these choices based on political considerations. Another diplomat, a gelatinous being from the Morcadian collective, pulsed with blue light as they spoke. But surely this is simply a case of juvenile confusion? The human repaired a toy. The offspring mistook gratitude for parental bonding. Tyler winced internally at having his role reduced to toy repair, though he supposed that was technically accurate. To everyone's surprise, it was the usually reserved royal progenitor Trell who responded, her voice sharp enough to make the translation system crackle. You fundamentally misunderstand Xenorian empathic capabilities, Ambassador. Our offspring do not confuse emotional signatures. They recognized in this human qualities that resonate with our concept of nurturing care. The fact that these qualities exist in a species so different from our own is surprising, but not invalid. The station director attempted to steer the conversation to more practical matters. What exactly does this mean in terms of diplomatic protocol? What status does human Grant now hold? Tyler shifted uncomfortably as all eyes turned to him. He was a maintenance worker, not a diplomat. He had no training for this kind of scrutiny. Royal progenitor Zrell's next words stunned the assembly into silence. Human Grant has been officially registered in the Xenorian Royal Archives as a chosen caregiver to the royal offspring. This grants him the status of an honorary member of the royal household, with all associated diplomatic protections and considerations. The chamber erupted in a chaos of voices, translated into standard Galactic at varying volumes. Tyler stood frozen, trying to process what he'd just heard. Honorary member of the royal household? Diplomatic protections? This went far beyond his occasional visits to play with the children. The Voxian representative was practically vibrating with outrage. This is unprecedented. A maintenance worker cannot possibly hold diplomatic status equal to established ambassadors. Not equal, Trell corrected calmly. Distinct. Human Grant's status is specific to his role with our offspring and does not impinge upon traditional diplomatic hierarchies. Director Corellian, visibly struggling to maintain order, turned to Tyler. Human Grant, do you understand the implications of this designation? Tyler cleared his throat, acutely aware of his lack of diplomatic training. Not entirely, Director. I've simply been spending time with the royal children, teaching them about human culture and learning about Xenorian ways. I never expected or sought any official status. Yet you have accepted the parental designation, Zrell observed. You respond when our offspring call you Papa. Tyler couldn't deny it. Yes, it seemed cruel to reject their affection. This simple statement caused another stir among the assembled diplomats. Several of the more empathically sensitive species nodded in approval, while others exchanged troubled glances. The human speaks wisdom, declared Ambassador Threx of the Empathian Concord, a species known for their advanced emotional intelligence. To reject a child's genuine attachment would indeed be cruel, regardless of species. Perhaps there is more to humans than we have acknowledged. The meeting continued for hours, with various diplomatic factions debating the implications of Tyler's new status. Throughout it all, Tyler remained quiet and less directly addressed, overwhelmed by the realization that his simple act of repairing a broken toy had somehow placed him at the center of an interstellar diplomatic situation. Finally, as the meeting was drawing to a close, Royal Progenitor Zrell made an announcement that silenced the remaining debate. In light of this unique situation, and to further the understanding between our species, we have decided to extend our stay on Alteris beyond the Galactic Congress. A permanent Xenorian diplomatic mission will be established on this station, with our royal offspring remaining here for the duration of one standard galactic year. Human Grant will continue his duties as maintenance supervisor, but will be granted official time to fulfill his caregiving responsibilities. The implications were enormous. The notoriously reclusive Xenorians, establishing a permanent presence on a mixed-species station, with their royal children in residence? It was unprecedented. As the assembly dispersed, buzzing with the news, Tyler approached the royal progenitors hesitantly. "Your Majesties, I'm honored by your trust, but I'm concerned that I might not be able to fulfill your expectations. I know very little about Xenorian culture and traditions." Trell regarded him with multifaceted eyes that somehow managed to convey warmth despite their alien structure. "Yet you understand the most important tradition. That care transcends biological difference. Our offspring chose wisely." "But why me?" Tyler asked, the question that had been haunting him since that first day in the nursery. "I'm just a maintenance supervisor. There must be thousands of beings in the galaxy better qualified to teach royal children." Zrel and Trell exchanged one of their subsonic communications before Zrel answered. "When you repaired the memory sphere, you did more than fix a broken toy. That sphere contains the essence of our children's earliest experiences, their first connections to their heritage and identity. By restoring it, you demonstrated that you understand something fundamental about Xenorian values, the importance of preserving connections across time and space." Additionally, Trell added, "Our offspring reported that while you worked, you spoke of your own child. They sensed genuine parental love in you, a frequency of emotion that resonates similarly across many species. This is rare and valuable." Tyler thought about Emma, his daughter light years away on Mars Colony. He hadn't seen her in person for nearly 2 years, though they spoke regularly via quantum communication. He'd raised her alone after her mother's death, balancing the demands of parenthood with the necessity of providing for their future. Those years had been challenging, but filled with moments of joy that he cherished. "I do miss my daughter," he admitted. "Perhaps spending time with your children helps fill that empty space." Trell's scales shifted to a gentle rose color that Tyler had come to recognize as an expression of emotional understanding. "Then perhaps this arrangement benefits all. Our offspring gain a caregiver with unique perspective, and you gain connection. The best diplomatic arrangements serve mutual needs." As the formal proceedings concluded, Tyler was escorted back to the royal nursery to inform the children of the news that they would be staying on Alteris. As he entered, they swarmed around him with their usual enthusiasm, chirping questions and tugging at his uniform to show him their latest discoveries. Lumi, the smallest and most curious, climbed directly into his arms, a behavior that had shocked him at first, but which now seemed perfectly natural. "Papa Fix?" Lumi asked in halting standard Galactic, pointing to a small Xenorian puzzle cube that had apparently malfunctioned. "Let's take a look," Tyler replied, settling cross-legged on the floor with the child. As he examined the intricate device, the other royal children gathered around, watching intently. In that moment, surrounded by alien children who somehow saw him as a parental figure despite vast biological and cultural differences, Tyler Grant, human maintenance supervisor and unexpected diplomat, felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. He might be just a maintenance worker who had fixed a broken toy, but to these children, he was Papa. And somehow, against all odds and expectations, that simple designation had begun to change the relationship between two very different species in the vast, complex tapestry of galactic civilization. The news of Tyler's unusual status with the Xenorian royal family spread quickly throughout diplomatic station Alteris. The human maintenance supervisor who had become an honorary member of one of the galaxy's oldest royal households became a subject of intense curiosity and speculation. Some viewed it as a diplomatic coup for humanity, evidence that the species had qualities worthy of recognition by established galactic powers. Others saw it as a bizarre aberration, a temporary Xenorian eccentricity that would soon be corrected. A few even suggested that Tyler must have manipulated the situation somehow, though none could explain how a human maintenance worker could possibly influence the empathically sensitive royal offspring of a species known for their emotional perceptiveness. For Tyler himself, the situation brought both privileges and complications. His work schedule was officially modified to accommodate his new responsibilities, with half of each day devoted to his maintenance duties and half to his role as caregiver to the royal children. He was assigned new quarters adjacent to the Xenorian diplomatic section, significantly larger and more comfortable than his previous maintenance staff housing. Most noticeably, the way others treated him changed dramatically. Station personnel who had barely acknowledged his existence now greeted him respectfully. Diplomatic staff who had previously looked through him as if he were invisible now included him in conversations. Even his fellow maintenance workers regarded him with a mixture of awe and confusion, unsure how to interact with a colleague who suddenly had one foot in their world and one in the rarefied atmosphere of interstellar diplomacy. Tyler found these social changes far more challenging than adapting to Xenorian childcare. He was uncomfortable with deference and had no interest in status for its own sake. More than once, he had to remind both humans and aliens that he was still just a maintenance supervisor who happened to have an unusual secondary role. "I still fix broken things," he would say with a shrug when someone treated him with unexpected formality. The only difference is that now some of those things belong to royal children. 3 weeks after the formal diplomatic announcement, Tyler was in the royal nursery, showing the children how to build a simple mechanical clock, a project he'd once done with Emma when she was young. The Xenorian children, with their 4 arms and remarkable dexterity, were assembling the components with impressive speed and precision. "See how the gears mesh together?" Tyler explained, demonstrating with 2 interlocking pieces. Each one helps the others move at exactly the right speed. "It's like a team working together." Lumi, who had become especially attached to Tyler, chirped a question that the translator rendered as, "Like station? Many parts working?" Tyler smiled, impressed by the child's insight. "Exactly like that. A space station is just a much bigger machine with many more parts working together." "And people parts too?" asked Klez, the eldest of the royal children, who had recently shown increasing interest in social structures. "Yes, the people are essential parts of the system too," Tyler agreed. "Everyone has their role, just like every gear in the clock." As they worked together on the clock, Tyler was struck again by how quickly the children had adapted to his presence in their lives. Despite the vast biological and cultural differences, they seemed to accept him without reservation, treating his human characteristics, so alien to their species, as simply another interesting facet of their papa. Their acceptance had gradually spread to their Xenorian caretakers and staff as well. The royal guards, who had initially watched Tyler with obvious suspicion, now greeted him with formal respect. The Xenorian tutors and nurses, specialists in royal offspring development, had begun consulting him about human educational practices and cultural perspectives that might enrich the children's understanding of the galactic community. In the middle of their clock-building session, the nursery doors slid open to admit Ambassador Krez, who had maintained a cordial but distant relationship with Tyler since the royal children had first claimed him as Papa. "Human Grant," Krez acknowledged with a formal gesture. "The royal progenitors request your presence at a diplomatic function this evening. The Arcadian Trade Minister has expressed interest in meeting the unusual addition to the Xenorian royal household." Tyler suppressed a sigh. This would be the 4th diplomatic event he'd been asked to attend in the past 2 weeks. Each one made him acutely aware of his lack of diplomatic training and his status as an object of curiosity rather than a legitimate participant. "Of course, Ambassador," he replied, keeping his tone neutral. "What time should I be ready?" 19th hour, station time. Appropriate attire has been delivered to your quarters." Krez paused, his scales shifting in what Tyler had come to recognize as a sign of discomfort. "I should inform you that several other diplomatic delegations have also requested your presence at their functions in the coming days. Your situation has generated significant interest." Tyler nodded, resigned to his new role as a diplomatic curiosity. "I understand. I'll do my best not to embarrass the royal household." Krez's gill flaps fluttered in what might have been surprise. "That is not the concern, Human Grant. The royal progenitors are satisfied with your conduct. It is rather that some delegations may have agendas beyond simple curiosity." This caught Tyler's attention. "What kind of agendas?" Various species are re-evaluating their assessment of human potential in light of your connection with our royal offspring. Some see opportunity in this. Krez scales rippled in complex patterns. The Voxians, in particular, have expressed concerns about human advancement in galactic affairs. Tyler frowned. The Voxian Federation had been notably cool toward humanity since first contact, viewing them as primitive upstarts unworthy of significant attention. I'm not advancing any human agenda, Ambassador. I'm just taking care of children who happen to be Xenorian royalty. Perhaps, but symbols often transcend intentions, human Grant. You have become a symbol of unexpected connection between a long-established galactic power and an emerging species. This has implications beyond your personal circumstances. Before Tyler could respond, Lumi tugged at his sleeve, holding up a perfectly assembled gear section of the clock. Papa, look. I made it work. Tyler's diplomatic concerns momentarily forgotten, he examined the child's work with genuine appreciation. That's excellent, Lumi. You've aligned the escapement perfectly. See how smoothly it turns. Lumi's scales rippled with pleasure, shifting to the golden hue that indicated happiness. The child chirped something that the translator rendered as, I fix things like Papa. Ambassador Krez observed this interaction with unreadable eyes. After a moment, he inclined his head slightly. I will leave you to your educational activities. Remember, 19th hour. After Krez departed, Tyler returned his attention to the clock project, but his mind kept returning to the ambassador's warning. He had never intended to become a diplomatic symbol or to influence interspecies relations. He had simply fixed a broken toy and shown kindness to children who needed comfort. How had that simple act resulted in such complex consequences? That evening, dressed in formal attire that combined human and Xenorian design elements, Tyler attended the diplomatic function as requested. The event was held in one of Alteris's grand reception halls, transformed for the occasion with floating light sculptures and gravity-defying floral arrangements from 20 different worlds. As he entered alongside Ambassador Krez, Tyler was acutely conscious of the attention his arrival generated. Conversations paused briefly as diplomats, traders, and officials from across the galaxy turned to observe the human who had somehow become attached to the Xenorian royal household. The royal progenitors, resplendent in ceremonial scale patterns that shifted in hypnotic rhythms, acknowledged Tyler with a formal gesture that designated him as being under their protection, a clear signal to the assembled dignitaries. Throughout the evening, Tyler was approached by representatives from various species, each conversation a delicate dance of cultural exchange and subtle diplomatic probing. He answered questions about his role with the royal children as honestly as he could, emphasizing that he was still primarily a maintenance supervisor who happened to have been chosen as a caregiver. It was during a brief moment of respite, as Tyler stood near a refreshment station designed to accommodate the diverse biological needs of the attendees, that he was approached by a human diplomat, the first of his species he'd encountered at the function. Maintenance Supervisor Grant, the woman said, extending her hand. I'm Diplomatic Envoy Elena Parker, Earth Central Government. May I say that your unique position has become a subject of considerable interest back home. Tyler shook her hand, relieved to interact with a fellow human after hours of navigating alien social protocols. It's still strange to me, Envoy Parker. I'm just doing a job. She smiled, though Tyler noted it didn't quite reach her eyes. A job that has accidentally accomplished what years of formal human diplomacy failed to achieve. Meaningful connection with the Xenorian Empire. The ECG is very interested in how you manage this. Tyler felt a flicker of unease. As I've told everyone, I fixed a broken toy. The children made the connection, not me. Of course, Parker agreed smoothly. But surely you must have demonstrated some quality that impressed the Xenorians? Something that might be replicable in our diplomatic approach. The implication was clear. Earth's government wanted to leverage his unexpected connection for broader diplomatic advantage. Before Tyler could formulate a response, another voice joined the conversation. Human empathic capacity is indeed fascinating, said Ambassador Threx of the Empathian Concord, approaching with fluid grace. Though your species lacks the biological structures for direct emotional perception, You demonstrate remarkable intuitive understanding across species barriers. Tyler nodded politely to the Empathian, whose species was known for their advanced emotional intelligence and neutrality in galactic politics. The royal children make it easy. They're very expressive once you learn to read their signals. Precisely, Threx agreed, their voice melodious even through the translation system. You adapted to their communication style rather than expecting them to adapt to yours. A simple approach that many sophisticated diplomats overlook. Envoy Parker's smile tightened slightly. Maintenance Supervisor Grant has certainly demonstrated unexpected talents. The Earth Central Government is considering how best to support his unique position. Tyler felt increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. I don't need support, Envoy. The Xenorians have provided everything necessary for my role with the children. But surely you must see the larger implications, Parker pressed. Your position could open doors for humanity throughout the galactic community. I'm not a diplomat, Tyler said firmly. I'm a maintenance supervisor and, apparently, an honorary caregiver to royal children. That's all. Ambassador Threx made a sound that the translator rendered as approving laughter. Refreshingly direct, as many humans are. Perhaps that is part of what the royal offspring respond to, communication without layers of calculation. Before Parker could respond, there was a commotion at the entrance to the reception hall. Station security officers were speaking urgently with Ambassador Krez, who immediately began moving through the crowd toward the royal progenitors. Tyler felt a surge of concern. "Excuse me," he said to Parker and Threx, already moving to follow Krez. Years of handling station emergencies had trained him to respond quickly to signs of trouble. He reached the royal progenitors just as Krez was explaining the situation, the ambassador's scales pulsing with obvious distress. Malfunction in the environmental systems of the royal nursery. The methane-oxygen balance has destabilized, and the temperature is rising beyond safe parameters for the royal offspring. Tyler's heart raced. The children are safe for the moment, Krez assured him. The emergency containment protocols activated, and they have been moved to a secure chamber. However, the environmental stabilization system must be repaired quickly. Our technicians are attempting to address the problem, but they are unfamiliar with the station's integrated systems. Without hesitation, Tyler turned to the royal progenitors. Permission to assist with repairs, Your Majesties? Station environmental systems are my specialty. Zrel's scales shifted to emergency patterns. Permission granted. Ambassador Krez will accompany you. As Tyler hurried from the reception hall with Krez, he was aware of the diplomatic audience watching their departure with curiosity and concern. The formal attire he wore was hardly appropriate for maintenance work, but there was no time to change. They reached the royal nursery section to find it in controlled chaos. Station security had established a perimeter, and technical teams were monitoring readouts from the environmental systems. Through a transparent barrier, Tyler could see the royal children huddled in a secure chamber, attended by their regular caretakers. They appeared frightened but unharmed. Lumi spotted him immediately and pressed small webbed hands against the barrier, calling out, "Papa," in a voice that made Tyler's chest tighten with protective instinct. "I'm here," he called back reassuringly. "Everything will be fine." The station's chief engineer, a Tyrellian named Voxrin, with whom Tyler had worked closely over the years, approached with a data tablet. "Grant, good timing. The Xenorian environmental system has gone haywire. Primary control nodes are overheating, and the backup systems aren't engaging properly. The integration with station systems is creating feedback loops we can't break." Tyler took the tablet, scanning the diagnostic data quickly. The Xenorian quarters had been specially modified to create a methane-rich, high-pressure environment similar to their home world. These modifications had been integrated with the station's primary environmental systems, but maintained separate control protocols for security reasons. "The problem's in the adaptation matrix," Tyler said after a moment. "See these power fluctuations? Something's disrupting the communication between the Xenorian environmental controls and the station's main system." He handed the tablet back to Voxrin and moved to a maintenance access panel, keying in his override code. "I need to check the physical connections. The diagnostic data isn't showing the complete picture." Ambassador Krez watched anxiously as Tyler removed the panel and examined the complex array of circuitry and biomechanical interfaces that connected the specialized Xenorian environmental systems to the station's infrastructure. "There," Tyler said after a moment, pointing to a small device nestled among the legitimate components. "That shouldn't be there. It's some kind of disruptor, specifically targeting the communication protocols between systems." Voxrin leaned closer, compound eyes widening. "That's not a malfunction. That's sabotage." Tyler felt a chill run through him. Someone had deliberately endangered the royal children. "We need to remove it carefully. It might be rigged to cause more damage if tampered with incorrectly." Using tools from an emergency kit, Tyler delicately extracted the foreign device, examining it without disconnecting its power source. Sophisticated work. It was programmed to create escalating environmental instability that would appear to be a system malfunction. "Who would dare threaten our royal offspring?" Krez demanded, his scales darkening with anger. "That's a question for security," Tyler replied grimly. "Right now, let's focus on stabilizing the environment and making sure the children are safe." With the disruptor removed, Tyler and Voxrin worked quickly to reset the environmental controls and restore proper communication between the Xenorian and station systems. Within 30 minutes, the readings had returned to normal parameters. "The environment is stabilizing," Voxrin confirmed. "Methane-oxygen ratio returning to Xenorian standard. Temperature decreasing to optimal range." Tyler nodded, relief washing over him. "Let's run a full diagnostic on all connected systems." Whoever placed that device might have left others. As the technical teams began comprehensive scans, security officers arrived to take possession of the sabotage device and begin an investigation. The royal progenitors, who had arrived during the repair process, approached Tyler with formal dignity that barely concealed their concern. "Human Grant," Zrel acknowledged. "Once again, you have preserved something precious to us." Tyler shook his head. "I just did my job, Your Majesty. The same as any maintenance supervisor would." "Yet you recognized the true nature of the problem when others saw only malfunction," Trell observed. "And you acted without hesitation to protect our offspring." Before Tyler could respond, the secure chamber's doors opened, and the royal children rushed out, their scales flashing with emotional colors. They surrounded Tyler, chirping in relief and excitement, their translators rendering a chorus of "Papa Safe" and "Papa Fix." Lumi, as usual, climbed directly into his arms, pressing a small face against his chest in what Tyler had come to recognize as a Xenorian gesture of trust and affection. The other children crowded close, their scales gradually shifting from the orange-red of fear to the calmer blues and greens of security. "Everyone's safe now," Tyler assured them, kneeling to bring himself to their level. "The system had a problem, but it's fixed. You were all very brave." As he comforted the children, Tyler was acutely aware of the royal progenitors watching the interaction. Despite the crisis, or perhaps because of it, he felt a deepening sense of responsibility toward these alien children who had so unexpectedly claimed him as their papa. Later that night, after the children had been settled and additional security measures implemented, Tyler was summoned to a private meeting with the royal progenitors and station security officials. The formal reception had long since concluded, with most attendees unaware of the drama that had unfolded in the royal nursery. Station Security Chief Laren, a stern Proximan with exoskeletal features that always reminded Tyler of ancient Earth samurai armor, presented the preliminary findings. The device was of Voxian manufacture, specifically their military-grade disruption technology. However, this does not necessarily implicate the Voxian Federation directly. Such devices can be acquired through various channels. "The timing is suspicious," Ambassador Krez noted, coming immediately after Human Grant's conversation with the Earth diplomat and the Empathian ambassador, who would have witnessed his departure. Tyler frowned. "You think someone wanted to draw me away from the reception?" "What? Perhaps to observe your response," suggested Royal Progenitor Zrel. "To test the depth of your commitment to our offspring. Or to create an incident that would strain relations between our species," Trell added. "There are those in the galactic community who view the growing connection between Xenorians and humans with concern." Security Chief Laren's exoskeletal plates shifted in what Tyler recognized as a gesture of caution. We should not jump to conclusions without evidence. The investigation is ongoing. Tyler rubbed his eyes, feeling the exhaustion of the day catching up with him. Whoever did this endangered children, royal or not, they're still just kids. A sentiment that reveals much about human values, Trell observed, and one that aligns with Xenorian priorities, despite our many differences. The meeting continued late into the night, with security protocols reviewed and enhanced for both the royal nursery and Tyler's quarters. By the time he finally returned to his rooms, Tyler was physically and emotionally drained. As he removed the formal attire he'd worn to the reception, now smudged with maintenance residue and technical fluids, Tyler reflected on how thoroughly his life had been transformed in the weeks since he'd fixed a broken toy. He had become, improbably, a figure of diplomatic significance, a target for possible manipulation, and most unexpectedly, a parental figure to alien royalty. The following weeks brought increased security measures and scrutiny, but life on diplomatic station Alteris gradually settled into a new routine. Tyler continued his dual role as maintenance supervisor and caregiver to the royal children, finding unexpected satisfaction in both responsibilities. The investigation into the sabotage attempt proceeded quietly, with no public acknowledgement of the incident to prevent diplomatic complications. Security around the Xenorian quarters and Tyler himself was enhanced but kept unobtrusive to avoid creating the impression of crisis. 6 weeks after the incident, Tyler was in his workshop, showing the royal children how to build simple mechanical toys from spare parts. The Xenorian offspring had proven remarkably adept at understanding human engineering principles, their natural dexterity and forearmed anatomy, giving them advantages in fine manipulation that human children lacked. See how the spring stores energy? Tyler explained, demonstrating with a simple wind-up mechanism. When you turn the key, you're compressing the spring, saving up energy for later use. Lumi, who had become his most enthusiastic student, chirped a question that the translator rendered as, like saving memories in the sphere. Tyler smiled, impressed by the child's ability to draw connections between different concepts. Very similar, yes. The memory sphere stores experiences the way the spring stores energy. Both keep something valuable for later. The door to the workshop slid open, admitting Ambassador Krez and a Xenorian Tyler didn't recognize, a female judging by her scale patterns, dressed in formal scientific regalia. Human Grant, Krez acknowledged. This is Senior Researcher Mrev from the Xenorian Scientific Academy. She has been analyzing the repaired memory sphere and wishes to discuss your work. Tyler stood, wiping his hands on a cloth. Of course. Children, please continue with your projects. I'll be just over here if you need help. The royal children chirped acknowledgement, already absorbed in their mechanical creations. Tyler led Krez and the researcher to a small conference area at the side of the workshop. Senior Researcher. He greeted her with the appropriate Xenorian gesture of respect. I hope the repairs to the sphere have proved adequate. Mrev's scales shifted in patterns that indicated scientific curiosity. More than adequate, Human Grant. They are, in fact, remarkable. You achieved functional restoration of a quantum crystalline matrix using improvised materials and techniques that our specialists would not have attempted. Tyler shrugged modestly. I just worked with what was available. The station's fabrication system is pretty versatile. It is not the materials that impress us, Mrev continued, but the approach. You created adaptive pathways around the damaged sections of the crystal rather than attempting direct repair. This method preserved 97.3% of the stored memory patterns, significantly more than our initial estimates suggested was possible. It seemed the logical solution, Tyler explained. The crystal was too damaged for a complete restoration, but the memory pathways were still intact. I just had to find a way to route around the broken sections, like creating a detour around a blocked road. Mrev and Krez exchanged glances, communicating in subsonic frequencies that Tyler's translator couldn't detect. After a moment, Mrev continued. Your approach has significant implications beyond the repair of a single sphere. The memory technology is central to Xenorian culture, preserving our collective experiences across generations. Your adaptive technique may be applicable to damaged heritage crystals in our central archives. Tyler blinked in surprise. You're talking about cultural artifacts? Important historical records. Precisely, Mrev confirmed, her scales shifting to patterns of scholarly enthusiasm. Some of our oldest memory crystals have sustained damage over millennia that we considered irreparable. Your technique suggests new possibilities for recovery. Ambassador Krez interjected, his tone formal, but with undertones that Tyler had learned to recognize as cautious optimism. The Scientific Academy has submitted a formal request to the royal progenitors, seeking permission for you to consult on the restoration of selected archive crystals. Tyler felt momentarily overwhelmed. First, he had become an unexpected caregiver to royal children, and now he was being asked to help preserve alien cultural heritage, all because he'd approached a broken toy with practical problem-solving instead of following conventional expectations. "I'd be honored to help," he said sincerely, "though I should emphasize that I'm a maintenance supervisor, not a cultural preservation specialist." "Yet you succeeded where our specialists failed," Mrev pointed out. Sometimes fresh perspective transcends formal expertise. From across the workshop came the sound of excited chirping. Tyler glanced over to see Lumi holding up a perfectly assembled wind-up toy, demonstrating it proudly to the other royal children. The small mechanism moved with smooth precision, exactly as designed. "Papa, look," Lumi called, noticing Tyler's attention. "I made it work." "Excellent work, Lumi," Tyler called back with genuine pride. "The gears are perfectly aligned." He turned back to find Mrev observing the interaction with scientific interest. "The royal offspring have adapted remarkably to your presence," she noted. "Their linguistic and technical development has accelerated beyond projected parameters." "They're quick learners," Tyler said with a shrug. "All children are curious by nature. But the nature of their curiosity has evolved since your arrival," Mrev observed. "Previously, they focused primarily on biological and empathic studies, as is traditional for Xenorian offspring. Now they demonstrate unprecedented interest in mechanical systems and physical problem-solving." Tyler hadn't considered this perspective. He'd simply been sharing his knowledge and skills with the children, as he once had with his own daughter. "Is that a problem? Should I be encouraging different interests?" "On the contrary," Mrev assured him, her scales shifting to patterns of scientific approval. "Cognitive diversity strengthens a species. Your influence is providing valuable complementary development to their traditional education." The conversation continued, with Mrev explaining the protocols for accessing cultural archives and the parameters of the consultation Tyler was being asked to provide. Throughout, he was struck by the strange turns his life had taken, from anonymous maintenance worker to caregiver for alien royalty to potential preserver of extraterrestrial cultural heritage. As the weeks passed, Tyler's unusual position continued to evolve. His consultation on the Xenorian memory crystals proved successful, with his adaptive repair techniques recovering historical and cultural data that had been considered lost for generations. The Xenorian Scientific Academy formally acknowledged his contribution, granting him an honorary designation that translated roughly as Preserver of Memory, a title of significant cultural importance. Meanwhile, his relationship with the royal children deepened. They continued to call him Papa, but the term had taken on greater meaning as they shared daily experiences and learning. Tyler taught them about human technology, culture, and values, while they taught him about Xenorian empathic perception, biological adaptability, and their complex social structures. For months after the royal children had first designated Tyler as Papa, he received a communication from Mars Colony University, a video message from his daughter, Emma. "Dad." Emma's face lit up the screen, her expression a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Is it true? The news feeds are saying you've become some kind of adopted parent to Xenorian royalty. There are rumors that you've been granted honorary status in their royal household. Why didn't you tell me?" Tyler smiled ruefully at his daughter's image. "It's complicated, Em. It all started with fixing a broken toy." He explained the strange sequence of events that had led to his current situation, trying to make it sound as ordinary as possible despite the extraordinary circumstances. Emma listened with increasing amazement. When he finished, she shook her head in wonder. "Only you, Dad. Only you could go to space as a maintenance supervisor and end up becoming an honorary alien royal." Tyler laughed. "Trust me, it wasn't planned. I'm still not entirely sure how it happened. It happened because you're you, Emma said fondly. You fix things. You care. You see problems as puzzles to solve, not obstacles to avoid. Those qualities transcend species, apparently. Her expression grew more serious. The news feeds are saying this could change human-Xenorian relations. Some analysts are suggesting it might even elevate humanity's status in the galactic community. Tyler shrugged uncomfortably. I'm not trying to be a diplomat or change interspecies relations. I'm just taking care of kids who happen to be royal. That's exactly why it matters, Dad, Emma pointed out. You're not trying to gain advantage or leverage the situation. You're just being genuinely caring. And that authenticity is something that advanced species with their complex diplomatic protocols might find refreshingly valuable. Tyler considered this perspective. He'd been so focused on the day-to-day responsibilities of his dual role that he hadn't fully contemplated the broader implications. The xenobiology department is buzzing about it, Emma continued. Professor Takahashi says it's the most significant cross-species bonding event documented since first contact. She's writing a paper on empathic recognition across biological barriers, using your experience as a case study. Tyler groaned. Great. I'm a case study now. Emma laughed. Get used to it, Dad. You might have accidentally become historically significant. Her expression softened. I'm proud of you, and I want to meet these kids who decided to adopt my father. I'd like that, Tyler said sincerely. They ask about you. I've shown them your pictures and told them stories. Lumi, the youngest, says you must be very smart to study how different species work. When my term ends, I'll apply for a visit permit, Emma promised. Assuming the Xenorian royal household would allow it. I think they would, Tyler said, surprised to realize how confident he was in this assessment. They value family connections. They'd understand you wanting to see your father. After the call ended, Tyler sat quietly for a moment, reflecting on Emma's perspective. Had he really changed something significant in human-Xenorian relations? It seemed impossible that one maintenance supervisor's connection with alien children could impact galactic diplomacy. And yet, the evidence suggested otherwise. The following day, Tyler was summoned to a formal meeting with the royal progenitors. Such meetings had become relatively routine, usually concerning the children's educational progress or security arrangements. However, this time he found not just Zrel and Trell waiting for him, but also Ambassador Krez, Senior Researcher Mrev, and several other high-ranking Xenorians he recognized from previous diplomatic functions. Human Grant, Zrel acknowledged formally. We have reached an important juncture in our stay on Alteris. Tyler nodded respectfully, suddenly concerned. Has something happened, Your Majesty? Indeed, Trell confirmed, her scales shifting to patterns Tyler had learned to recognize as indicating significant news. The Galactic Congress has formally approved the establishment of a permanent Xenorian embassy on Earth, the first such diplomatic mission to your home world. Tyler blinked in surprise. This was major diplomatic news. The reclusive Xenorians establishing a permanent presence on Earth? That's significant, he managed. Furthermore, Zrel continued, our royal offspring have expressed a strong desire to visit the human home world as part of their educational development. The Royal Council has approved this request, with certain security provisions. Tyler felt a mixture of surprise and concern. Earth isn't exactly designed for methane-breathing species, Your Majesties. The environmental adaptations would be challenging. The technical aspects have been addressed, Ambassador Krez interjected. The embassy complex will include appropriate environmental accommodations. The royal offspring will remain within these specialized areas. What does this have to do with me? Tyler asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Trell's scales shifted to the gentle rose color that indicated emotional understanding. Our offspring refuse to consider visiting Earth without their papa. They have been quite emphatic on this point. Tyler felt a complex mix of emotions. On one hand, the prospect of returning to Earth after years in space had a certain appeal, especially with Emma studying relatively nearby on Mars. On the other hand, it would mean leaving his position on Alteris, where he had built a life and career. We recognize that this would represent a significant change in your circumstances, Human Grant, Zrel acknowledged. Therefore, we propose a formal appointment. You would serve as the official human liaison to the royal offspring, with diplomatic status equivalent to a cultural attaché. Tyler's mind raced. A diplomatic appointment? Your Majesties, I'm honored, but I'm a maintenance supervisor, not a diplomat. Yet you have achieved more genuine diplomatic progress between our species than decades of formal negotiations, Krez pointed out. Sometimes effective diplomacy emerges from unexpected sources. The children trust you, Trell added simply. And through that trust, we have gained new perspective on humanity. This is the essence of true diplomatic exchange. Tyler thought about the strange journey that had brought him to this moment. A simple act of kindness, fixing a broken toy, had somehow created a bridge between two very different species. That bridge now offered an opportunity for greater understanding, not just for the royal children who called him Papa, but potentially for humans and Xenorians throughout the galaxy. If the children want me to accompany them, he said finally, then of course I will. Zrell's scales shifted to formal patterns of agreement. Then it is settled. Arrangements will be made for your transition to Earth alongside the diplomatic mission. Your quarters will be adjacent to the royal offspring's chambers, as they are here. As the meeting concluded with formal protocols, Tyler found himself reflecting on the improbable sequence of events that had transformed his life. He had come to space seeking work, anonymity, and the chance to provide for his daughter's education. He had expected to remain invisible, one more human maintenance worker in the vast infrastructure of interstellar civilization. Instead, he had become Papa to alien royalty, a preserver of extraterrestrial cultural heritage, and now, improbably, a diplomatic liaison. All because he had seen a broken toy not as a problem beyond his expertise, but as something he could try to fix with the skills and resources at hand. 3 weeks later, as he supervised the royal children boarding the Xenorian diplomatic vessel that would transport them to Earth, Lumi tugged at his sleeve. Papa, the small Xenorian said, using standard Galactic that had improved dramatically over the months. Will your world like us? Tyler knelt to meet the child at eye level, a gesture he had learned was important to Xenorian offspring. Some will be curious, some might be cautious, but many will welcome you, just as I did. Because you fix broken things? Lumi asked, scales shifting to questioning patterns. Sometimes fixing broken things helps fix misunderstandings too, Tyler replied with a smile. And that's something both our species need. Lumi considered this with typical Xenorian thoughtfulness, then nodded. We will help fix misunderstandings, like Papa taught us, as Tyler guided the royal children aboard the vessel that would take them to Earth. A journey that would mark a new chapter in human-Xenorian relations. He reflected that sometimes the most significant diplomatic breakthroughs came not from grand gestures or formal negotiations, but from simple acts of kindness and understanding. When the human janitor fixed the broken toy, every royal child started calling him Papa. And in doing so, they helped fix something far larger than a damaged memory sphere. The broken understanding between two species with the potential to achieve remarkable things together. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.